Now we're going to look at Ben Shapiro talking about the assassination from the United Healthcare CEO, or of the United
Well, folks, we
Healthcare
have
CEO.
updates in the search for the murderer of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, who, of course, on Wednesday. And there are some pretty deep ramifications for American society and all this. We'll get to that in a moment. First, time is running out. Daily Wire Plus is 50% off, but not for much longer. Get a full year of uncensored shows, exclusive series, documentaries, and more, all at half the price. Head on over to dailywire.com/cyberweek before it is too late. Alrighty, so on Wednesday, as we know, the United Health executive, Brian Thompson, was shot to death on the streets of New York. Authorities are still searching for the suspect at this point, according to the Wall Street Journal. Police are combing New York City for the suspect who used a Sharpie to write "deny, defend, and depose" on cartridges that are believed to have come out of his gun when it jammed, according to law enforcement officials. Some of those words are commonly associated with tactics insurers use to avoid paying claims. Investigators believe that the suspect may be staying or may have stayed at a hostel on Manhattan's Upper West Side. The NYPD hasn't publicly identified the person who ambushed Brian Thompson. However, they have released an image of the person, quote-unquote, wanted for questioning. They released his face. He's smiling and wearing a hood in one of the photos as he appears to lean on a counter. Authorities are offering up a reward of up to 10 grand for information leading to an arrest in the case. The real question in all of this is how Americans respond. So Taylor Lorenz, we talked about her yesterday. She is a psychotic former reporter for the Washington Post and the New York Times. She's totally insane. She was insane on COVID. She was insane when it came to the supposed predations of
I
people
don't know much
on the
about
right
Taylor
who ought
Lorenz.
to, she said, be shut out of media, and particularly social media. Well, now she is full-scale rallying in favor of the murderer. So she tweeted yesterday on Blue Sky, which is a weird left-wing echo chamber form of Twitter. There was a post put out by Blue Cross Blue Shield all about whether it was going to pay for anesthesia under its healthcare coverage. And she then tweeted out, quote, "And people wonder why we want these executives dead." So openly cheering the death of Brian Thompson. That wasn't her only post. Somebody put out a statement saying, quote, "Legislation idea, healthcare executives and their families must be on the cheapest plan their company offers, and they aren't allowed to seek other care."
That makes a lot of sense. That would be a good thing to do.
And she wrote in all capital letters, "Endorse." Then she put out a post.
How is that like he acts like that's something mad or bad? If they think their cheapest plan is a good enough plan for somebody, they should be on it.
That showed a graphic of a happy star, like a star with a happy face and balloons, and the caption "CEO down." And she wrote, "Woke up to see this spammed in my group chats." And she said, "I am not alone," that other people were doing the same thing. Then she reposted a post from left-wing agitator Ken Klippenstein saying, "Today we remember the legacy of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson." And what exactly was that legacy? The claim denial rates by insurance companies. And of course, it's not just Taylor Lorenz. Socialist Nathan Robinson, a complete useless leech on the ass of society, posted himself, quote, "Live your life in such a way that people will be sad when you die." That was above a screen cap of a New York Times headline.
How is that a bad thing to say? Like, wouldn't live your life so people miss you when you die? Or in a way that's an excellent piece of advice.
It said, "Torrent of hate for health insurance industry follows CEO's killing." That piece from the New York Times is all about people who apparently were perfectly fine with the murder of Brian Thompson on the streets of New York City.
A lot of these right-wingers are perfectly fine with the murders in Chicago. All over the place. Like, why is there such a manhunt for this one dude? How many people have been shot in New York since this guy's been shot? I'm sure there's been a few murders in New York since then.
According to the New York Times, none of this stopped social media commentators from leaping to conclusions and showing a blatant lack of sympathy over the death of a man who was a husband and father of 2 children. "Thoughts and deductibles to the family," read one comment underneath a video of the shooting posted online by CNN. "Unfortunately, my condolences are out of network."
But I mean, isn't that what they do to us? They thoughts and prayers, condolences, all that. When you pay in, they don't pay out.
User wrote, quote, "I'm an ER nurse, and the things I've seen dying patients get denied for by insurance, it makes me physically sick. I just can't feel sympathy for him because of all those patients and their families." And these sorts of messages were incredibly common across the internet. We discussed yesterday a Columbia professor who wrote something very similar. Unfortunately, bubbling under the surface of all this is something very serious, really serious. What is that serious thing? The revolutionary left is creeping into the mainstream. Yesterday we talked about liberals
Good.
versus the left. Liberals are people who disagree with me on public policy, but aren't in favor of, the murder of their opponents. The left is a different thing.
The revolutionary left. Oh,
The shooting of Thompson has unleashed a wave of evil from members of the left. Thompson was not a criminal. He wasn't even an advocate of death, the way, for example, abortion or...
In a real society, he'd be a criminal. No one should make that much money off of death, off of killing people. And then he's going to talk about...
euthanasia advocates are. And by the way, murdering an abortionist or an advocate of euthanasia would be unjustifiable morally in a democratic system. Brian Thompson's great sin, according to these people, is that he was the head of a company that exists within a mixed private-public healthcare framework, and that he did his job, because that's how...
His job is denying people coverage, letting people die or be hurt or sick. But then, I thought he was going to say some other stuff, but he's talking about the revolutionary left and killing people. The right kills us. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, JFK, revolutionary leftists, Fred Hampton. Revolutionary leftists are always targeted by the mainstream and the right.
Health insurance actually works. Some things are covered and some things are not. And you may not like the application of the coverage, and it may be bad. That is not an excuse for murder. But for the left, if you hate the system, you are morally justified in murdering anyone who acts within the system.
That is not true. How many people just get murdered all the time? Like, no one's just going around talking about, oh, I don't like the way. If that were so, like Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, Ted Cruz, all these right-wingers would be offed, right? If the left was just murderous.
That means that if, like one Bernie Sanders follower did, you believe that private health
One
care
Bernie
kills
Sanders
Americans,
follower.
you can go around murdering Congress people. I know we buried
Bernie Sanders has the most followers of any politician out there. One follower. There's one bad apple. Ooh.
that one. The media pretended it never happened. Steve Scalise is still limping today because he was nearly shot to death by a Bernie Sanders fan who believed that being part of the quote-unquote system that didn't nationalize healthcare meant you were a murderer.
Right, and Trump could shoot somebody in the face and they wouldn't care. And he told cops to bump people's heads on the car on the way in while they put him in the car. Like, both sides, it's not even both sides, but
This
Democrats
stuff
and
means
Republicans.
if you don't like that health insurers often deny coverage for certain pre-existing conditions or non-covered doctors or medication, you can then murder the CEO of a health insurance company. This is revolutionary leftist evil. And it's evil for a couple of reasons. First, violence is not justified in a democracy where your say is part of the process. This is why...
We are the most warring nation of all time. We have been at war over 222 years. How is violent? This democracy is violence.
Democracies are generally good because they outsource the violence to the government. Revolution to overthrow tyranny is justified, but tyranny has to be actually real, and violence has to be the last resort. I didn't like public policy in California, so I picked up my family and my company, and we left.
So the tyranny of the healthcare industry is pretty real. People are dying all the time. People are, again, it's the biggest reason people file for bankruptcy in the U.S. is health, medical bills.
Tyranny is not real in the case of healthcare in the United States. Violence is not being used as last resort in this particular case. If you perceive America to be a tyranny and violence to be the proper response, that is a call for unending violence until the system itself is changed. It's a call for revolution.
Yes, let's change the system. Let's have a revolution.
That is a call for revolution.
Right.
Second, violence against members of private industry, that isn't even a protest of public policy. Let's be fair about this. That isn't even shooting politicians, which would be evil enough. It's even a different level of evil, because it's a protest against the very system of free markets themselves. Brian Thompson isn't responsible for America's healthcare system any more than the head of CVS is responsible for America's trade system.
Don't take a job that has you killing people. Like, if you're a repo man, like, I don't care if your car gets hit or stolen or stuff, like repo, you should never be a repo man. Just don't do it.
Directing hatred against Brian Thompson is not about shaping public policy, because you could shoot every CEO in America and it wouldn't shape public policy.
I think it would.
It turns out that it's about trying to threaten anyone who engages in free markets at all. This is simply Marxist left.
So you can look all over the world. Anytime there's a Marxist, communist society that's coming up trying to do good, the West, especially the U.S., will go kill them, have a coup, do all kinds of democracy spreading violence.
Leftist radical evil. This person could just as easily have shot a doctor who decided not to perform a surgery, or shot a bank CEO who denied a loan application for a home.
Well,
Would have
yes.
fallen under the same category.
Right.
This, by the way, is not uncommon, unfortunately, in modern Western history. This was all the philosophy of the Red Army faction in Germany in the 1970s. That was known as the Baader-Meinhof gang. They weren't seeking a better world. They were seeking to tear down the world of capitalism on behalf of Marxist revolutionary evil. These are people
To
who
make a better
routinely
world.
quoted Herbert Marcuse and Antonio Gramsci. They called for revolution. Ulrike Meinhof, a left-wing radical journalist, led the way. She famously said, quote, "Protest is when I say this does not please me. Resistance is when I ensure what does not please me occurs no more." And that language is replete with echoes in today's society, from college campuses to left-wing media.
And so the West spread capitalism through imperialism. They put it on people. Nobody wanted this. Nobody asked for this. Everything was going fine and dandy before. Everybody was eating, doing things. The spread of technology could be good. The spread of culture could be good, but you accept other people's culture too. But
that philosophy led the Baader-Meinhof gang to engage in routine assassination of everyone, from industrialists like Hans-Martin Schleyer to Dresdner bankhead Jürgen Ponto to American soldiers in Germany. These people also sometimes become the tools of enemy regimes. Baader-Meinhof certainly was. They worked with the Stasi, the East German Stasi, other Soviet agents to foment chaos. They coordinated with terrorist groups.
You know who also worked with the Soviets? The U.S. They're the reason that we beat Hitler. The Soviets lost like 20 million people in that war, and then we turned on them right after and had the Cold War with them.
It's like the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine and the Palestine Liberation Organization itself. The origins of Baader-Meinhof came from the 1968 student protests in Germany. Does any of this sound familiar? They were Marxist in orientation. They were actually influenced by the 1960s.
Okay, well, I don't know as much about this German revolution that he's talking about, but you can understand kind of why what happened. But there's a famous picture. Let me get to it real quick. Well, there's a famous picture with Stalin, FDR, and Churchill. So let's see if they got the images. There we go. So it's Joseph Stalin, FDR, and Winston Churchill right here. There's a bunch of different pictures. They used to call, that's why the U.S. character is called, like they used to call Joseph Stalin Uncle Joe, right? And so I don't understand, like people don't know history well enough. So anyway, the left, communism, socialism, is for the people. It's community-ism. It's society-ism. Capitalism is capital. Capital is money. So it's money-ism. If you're just worried about the money, then people are going to suffer. It's a competition. Life shouldn't be a competition. It's cool to compete in sports, but we beat that now. We have farms. We have ways to feed everybody. We have housing for everybody. We have machines. The life doesn't need to be a rat race anymore. We can have a cooperative society and compete in certain places, but society overall needs to be cooperative. But anyway, that was Ben Shapiro's take on, or at least some of his take on, Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, getting assassinated. If you want to watch the rest, obviously go check out his show. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, and we will see you in the next one.